The cool night air hit Falak like a physical shock, as Mohit led her out of the small, warm sanctuary of the cafe. The bell above the door gave one final, soft chime, sounding like a funeral knell for the innocence she had lost inside those wooden walls. Her legs felt heavy, her balance kept only by the steadying presence of Mohit at her side. Under the dim, flickering streetlights, the city felt vast and predatory. Mohit stopped beside her, his silhouette tall and composed, a stark contrast to the internal wreckage she was currently navigating. He turned to her, his eyes searching her face with a gentleness that almost hurt. "Don't worry," he said, his voice low and firm, cutting through the distant hum of traffic. "I am with you in this, Falak, every step of the way." The weight of those words, a promise made in the dead of night, hung in the air between them. It was the kind of anchor she desperately needed, yet as she looked into his eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She offered a small, weary nod, her throat too tight to speak. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that this grace could protect her from the storm. But as she stood there on the pavement, she was entirely unaware that the most dangerous part of the night wasn't the truth she carried in her hand, but the man watching from the shadows across the street. A man whose patience had just reached its absolute, lethal limit. As Falak turned toward the waiting cab, Mohit's hand reached out, his fingers encircling her wrist with a gentle but firm grip. The sudden contact sent a jolt through her, her pulse quickening into a frantic rhythm against his skin. As he moved closer, the space between them evaporating, Falak held her breath, her heart suspended in the suffocating tension of the moment. She fisted the hem of her kurta. To any passerby, the scene was a picture of intimate devotion. A man unwilling to let his woman go, his body language screaming of a deep, protective love. Across the street, the man in the shadows saw exactly that. The interior of the car had become a pressure cooker of lethal envy. Saksham stepped out into the cool night air, but he felt nothing but the searing heat of a jealousy that threatened to turn his blood into molten lead. His fists were clenched so tight the skin over his knuckles looked ready to split, his entire body vibrating with a primal, territorial rage. It wasn't just anger. It was a soul-deep possessiveness that had been cultivated in the dark for 9 long years. Seeing another man's hand on her skin, the skin he considered his sanctuary, felt like a sacrilege. Every cell in his body demanded he bridge the distance and tear the intruder apart. His patience hadn't just run out, it had been incinerated. In his mind, he wasn't just watching a rival, he was watching a thief who deserved nothing less than a slow, agonizing end. He would kill this bastard for daring to touch what was his. On the other hand, the world remained soft and quiet between Mohit and Falak. He slid his hand down from her wrist, taking her palm in his and squeezing it with a reassuring warmth. "No matter what, you will always find me with you and a beer," he murmured, his voice a velvet caress full of heavy, shimmering promises. In the face of her family's ruin, his words were a lifeline, offered with a sincerity that felt like a shield against the coming dark. His words brought a flicker of hope to her heart, a sudden, desperate belief that she could actually save her brother. She smiled through her tear-filled eyes, nodding as she murmured softly, thank you for being there." Her voice was thick with a profound gratitude that seemed to vibrate in the cool night air. Mohit simply smiled back, a gentle nod acknowledging her thanks. Falak looked at him, her mind racing with a mix of wonder and relief. This man, this fine, honorable man who barely knew her, was standing ready to pull her family back from the brink. To her, in this moment of absolute vulnerability, he seemed like nothing less than an angel. "If my brother is saved, I will do anything for you. It's a promise, Mohit," she whispered, a soft, breathless laugh escaping her lips as the weight of the night finally began to lift. "Careful what you say. I may ask you from you," his voice replied, suddenly dropping its lighter tone to become strikingly serious. Falak, convinced he was merely returning to his earlier joking manner, let out another soft laugh. "Sure," she said with a final nod. Bidding him goodbye, she climbed into the waiting cab. As the vehicle pulled away, she waved at him through the window, her silhouette fading into the city lights. Mohit stood alone on the pavement, his hands tucked into his suit pockets as he watched the taillights of her cab disappear around the corner. He remained there for a long moment, the silence of the street settling around him. She is remarkable, isn't she? The words didn't come from his own mind. They were spoken in a deep, dark voice that seemed to emerge directly from the shadows behind him, a voice like grinding stones and cold winter air. Mohit turned, his breath catching as he came face to face with the one man in Jaipur anyone with sense knew to avoid. Saksham Singhal stood there like a monolith of suppressed violence, his presence radiating a cold, magnetic danger that seemed to swallow the streetlights. Mohit raised a brow, masking his sudden spike of adrenaline with a look of measured confusion. "Excuse me," he asked, his voice steady despite the sheer absurdity of the heir to the Singhal empire appearing out of the shadows. Saksham didn't even glance at him. His eyes remained fixed on the empty road, staring at the exact spot where Falak's cab had vanished. Mohit followed his gaze, a soft, unbidden warmth coloring his tone. "Yes, she is," Mohit whispered, the words heavy with hidden depth. "Brave, honest, and admirable." He spoke the last word almost to himself, but the man beside him caught it. Saksham always heard everything when it came to the girl, who was the reason he had crawled out of his penthouse and into this gutter. "She is also famous for breaking hearts," Saksham said, his voice dripping with a jagged, soul-deep sarcasm that felt like a serrated blade. Mohit finally turned his full attention to the man beside him. Up close, Saksham's demeanor didn't just suggest danger, it screamed it. "Talking from personal experience, Mr. Singhal?" Mohit asked, his voice lacing with a mocking edge. He let out a short, humorless chuckle. "Funny. The great Saksham Singhal came to me specifically to talk about a girl who didn't mention your name once tonight, let alone talk about you." The sound of Saksham's fist clenching was audible in the quiet street. In a blur of movement, Saksham lunged, his hand snaring Mohit's collar and jerking him close until their breaths mingled in the cold air. "Careful, Roy," Saksham hissed, his Greek god features contorted into something demonic, his eyes burning with a possessive fire that bordered on insanity. "You don't want to make an enemy of me." Mohit didn't flinch. With a slow, deliberate strength, he pried Saksham's hand from his collar. He took a moment to dust off his shoulder, looking at the titan before him with a strange, pitying intensity. "Careful, Mr. Singhal," Mohit countered, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "For a man who has a fiancée, you're showing a level of concern for another woman that wouldn't be good for your reputation. Especially a woman who is no longer your concern, who has moved on, and who surely doesn't want to be associated with you." He paused, sliding his spectacles back into place with chilling composure. "She moved on from a toxic relationship, Mr. Singhal. You should too," Mohit said, his eyes narrowing. "And about breaking hearts, she isn't the type to break anyone, she is pure." Mohit stepped forward, meeting Saksham eye to eye. Saksham was fuming, his entire frame vibrating with a silent, seething fire, but Mohit didn't back down. He leaned in, his voice a lethal whisper that felt like a vow. "Don't worry, she is under my protection now. I will keep her and her heart safe." He offered a final, stinging blow of a smile. "Congratulations on your engagement," his voice again mocked. Without waiting for a response, Mohit turned and walked away into the night, leaving Saksham standing alone in the shadows of the street, a silent predator whose territory had just been challenged by a man who fought with the one thing Saksham had forgotten how to use: grace.